Welcome to the Arcfluence podcast, where we talk about how design impacts the way we live, work, and invest. I'm Nick Caracan, your host, and with me today, not as usual, is Danny Porter.
Hello.
Danny, what happened to Paul?
Paul is out for today, but I'm here stepping in just like I was here last week.
Yeah.
And I'm honestly, we just finished this conversation and it was absolutely wonderful.
Charlene Li is a best-selling author, founder of the strategic advisory firm Quantum Networks Group. I got to tell you, she's speaking at the National AIA Convention in San Diego right around when this is going to be airing in June. And I can't wait to meet her in person. I just was so impressed with the conversation we had. And Danny, you really got to nerd out and go a little deep into the weeds.
I tried not to get too in the weeds. I told myself I wouldn't, but then she started talking about knowledge graphing and Claude
You couldn't
code,
help yourself.
and that was, it was over.
If you guys really want to, you're going to just love this so much. We do get in a little bit to the architectural industry and design professionals and how we're utilizing AI. But like, this is just a good high level conversation about how it's really changing the world right now and a healthy mindset on how to look at it. Let's just get into it.
Let's do it.
Charlene, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I got to say, I'm super excited to talk to you today. So much has happened in this past year that it's so hard to wrap our head around what's going on with AI and how it's impacting almost every industry.
Yeah. And again, I literally took a few weeks off in January to take care of my parents who were ailing. And I came back and in that time, things like Claude Cowork and OpenClaw had launched. And I'm like, oh my goodness, everything has changed now. Again, what is happening? So that speed of change is just head spinning. And it's really hard to feel like you're on top of things. And I think we should give that up. We should give up trying to be like, okay, how do I stay on top of it? You're just not going to. And so, we'll talk a little bit about how to deal with that.
Yeah.
And how to get comfortable, just not knowing everything.
Well, before we do that, I'd love to hear about your story. You have been in this industry for longer than anyone I even heard of. You have decades of experience with this, and you've kind of seen the inception of all of it. So do you mind just telling us a little bit about how you got started, your journey, and how it's led up to today?
Sure thing. I came out of Harvard Business School in 1993, which is like ancient times. And I could see that this thing called the internet was happening. And just to give you some context, the World Wide Web was invented by Tim Berners-Lee the same month I graduated. So I headed off to Silicon Valley to work for, get this, newspapers. And it was because I had done this analysis and said, I know nothing about hardware and software, but I read a lot of newspapers. I love them. And I could see that with the internet, newspapers were going to be highly impacted and highly disrupted. And I believe in the existence of the fourth estate. So I said, how do we manage this disruption? So I wanted to be at newspapers at that front end, that front seat of disruption. And I got my wish. I was helped put the newspaper online onto the web. And in particular, how do we sell advertising around that? And then I moved to the community newspaper company in Boston because I got married and moved there and did that with 120 newspapers, weekly and daily papers to put them all online. And like, what's the business model? How do you do this? And we actually ran profitable online newspapers right from the very beginning. But it required us to think about things in a very different way. So I started my professional career out of business school in this space, in the disruptive technology space. But I've always approached it not as a technologist, but as a leader and as a strategist. And I think that's the through line. It's never about the technology. It is always about the people.
Agreed, yeah.
What were you seeing that worked? What was the mindset in a technological change environment, an environment of just no one can predict exactly where it's going to go?
Well, the consistent thing and that we did was I've structured my entire company. I started a company called Altimeter. It was an analyst firm, and then sold it in 2015. So I have hands-on experience with doing this. We took a design thinking approach to this. We said, what's the problem? What's the problem you want to serve? Who are you serving? Who are your customers? And so if it's newspapers, what does your audience need? They don't want newspapers. They want news. They want information. So how do you solve that problem? So if you define what your business is by what you do versus the problem that you solve, you're going to be toast. But if you define yourself through the problems and understand them deeply, understand your customers and your audiences deeply,
Yep.
you're going to have always the right solution. And so in my last book, The Disruption Mindset, what we talked about was understanding the needs of your future customer. And the further out you can look, the more disruptive you're going to be. Because if you could see what that future looks like and you have confidence that you're guessing, and again, you're always guessing, you're guessing in the right direction, and you know that you can pivot when needed, then you can start making the changes you have to today in order to get to that place in the future. And that's what allows you to be disruptive, is to make decisions. I was talking to a firm earlier today, and there was like, our leaders have, they're very excited about AI, they're doing experimenting, but they're really hesitant to pull the trigger, to just really make decisions. And I go, that is the key. That is when leadership is needed, because you can play with the technology all day, but at some point you have to make choices, make decisions, exercise judgment. That is a leadership issue. When you make a decision when things are so uncertain. If it was 100% certain, you wouldn't be a leader, you'd be managing things.
Yeah.
You'd be managing the status quo.
Well,
But we need leaders.
Yeah, there's a liability that you need to navigate with using AI as a tool versus the leadership decision-making piece and the culture that they're creating in the company and with their, customer base. So I think that I think we're figuring it out, right? I know we're doing a lot with it. At least it feels like we're doing a lot. But I also look at other companies who are doing a lot more. So it's I just want to actually, Danny and I have constant conversations about like how do we experiment with this? How do we guess right, in the right direction? Because it's so. This is the Wild Wild West, right? And it seems like it keeps getting bigger and bigger. Now we have our Claude agents, and because you mentioned you got to get on Claude, and like it's just wild how much it's evolved already, and I just can't imagine the next few years.
Charlene, beyond the tools, how did you find yourself moving from the journalism world and the disruption there into disruptions in other industries in the book? Was that the impetus for writing that book or other books? I want to hear more about your journey that led you all the way to the AIA conference.
Yeah, it's just a little topsy-turvy. I was in newspapers, and then I had a baby, frankly. And I didn't want to, I felt like I was managing babies at work and at home, being a leader and a manager. And so I'm like, I need a break. So I became an analyst at Forrester Research. I was just individual contributor. I didn't have to manage anybody. And I was so happy just to be working in the world of ideas and to turn it off at 5:00 and go home and take care of my family. And I found that this was not going to be a 2-year stint, a little thing, but my family was young. I stayed at Forrester for 10 years. I hit my sweet spot. I love working in the world of ideas. And so I started covering internet media and internet marketing during the dot-com boom. So I was doing the advertising sizing that drove a lot of the dot-com boom valuations. And then I picked up search marketing, so rode the rise of Google and search engine marketing. Then I picked up social media, started blogging in 2004. So the thing here is that I just get bored easily. I figure out what's going on in one area and like, okay, there's something weird here. How does search work? And you have to remember when search first came out, people were like, this is like junky stuff. Who would pay 8 cents to reach a market? I go, you have no idea. You've never run a business before. A lot of people would.
Yeah.
And you just pay 1 penny more than your second biggest. I mean, it was brilliant the way they did ad rank. So my thing here is that there was always something new and interesting happening. And if somebody was willing to take up my old topic areas, I would happily give it to them. And they were thinking, this is great. I've got the hottest topic. I've been doing search. Char's going to go and look at this crazy blogging space. Like, go have it. But my blogging turned into looking at social media. We wrote the book in 2007, published in 2008. Facebook is barely mentioned in there. Twitter is barely mentioned in there. And those were the things that took off. And when I started the firm in 2008, Altimeter Group, we were right in the middle of all of this turmoil with the economic recession. And everybody just wanted to know, how do I use social media? Because it seems like a really cheap alternative to marketing. And there was nobody else around talking about that.
Yeah.
So we just got very lucky. And I find that talking about disruption is sort of recession proof. People want to know how to disrupt during good times, and they want to know how not to be disrupted during bad times.
When I hear you talk about AI, it's actually a breath of fresh air to me in this media environment. I'm on, a lot of people on X, they're seeing the new models come out constantly. They're seeing the new strategies. But it seems like your take is that companies don't need an AI strategy. They need a strategy, and then they need the AI fills roles. So I've been watching these videos where some commencement speakers will talk about AI and they're getting booed. People are worried. They're upset. They're saying, this seems like it's a replacement technology that is going to pull up the ladder before I have a chance to learn the skills that will make me an architect or a developer or a user experience designer and a programmer. I love how you frame it not as a replacement, but an augmentative tool that has a place, and finding where that place fits the vision that you have. Am I reading your kind of overview correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think 2 points. Again, there's a lot of hype and froth out there.
Mm-hmm.
And again, going back to our discussion earlier, don't focus on what AI does. Really focus on the problems it can help you solve. And so instead of figuring out what the latest model is or which model is the best one to use, and there's no right answer to that, figure out what is the problem you have, and then tell AI, I have this problem. How can I use AI to solve this problem? I mean, it's kind of meta, but that's how I advise people to approach it. It is a tool. It is a wonderful technology. It is a fantastic resource. Know what it can do and what it can't do. It is not a panacea for everything. But I think it can do a lot more if we were to ask it the questions, and we're not asking it the good questions, the great questions, so that we can get the great answers out of it. We're doing what we call one-shotting, like, give me the answer. Like if you were to come up to me and just give me the answer to the secret of life, I can't tell you that, right? So you can't one-shot me. But if we were to have a discussion about it, we could probably tease out, what does that mean to have a good life? And in the same way, how can AI be used for your company? Well, what are your biggest problems? What are your biggest opportunities? Let's start with that. And you know that better than anyone else. Is that the fact that you have all of these pre-built requirements that people want to get to before you get paid?
Mm-hmm.
Is it thinking about how are you going to, because you have to have a pipeline of talent. If AI is doing more of the manual drafting, then how do your entry-level architects and drafters get that experience so they can develop that judgment?
Yeah.
So these are the interesting questions, right? And in particular to that talent question. And this is, you're running into this potential of having a missing generation of talent coming in. Because right now, even today, about 30% of design and drafting tasks can be automated. So how do you develop the craft of architecture if you don't have the ability to actually do those drawings? There's so much learning that comes into that. So you have to redesign, what does apprenticeship look like? What are you actually training for? And so this isn't about doing the drafting, it's critiquing the AI's drafting. It's a very different skill set.
Yeah.
So you may not be doing so much of the manual work anymore. And frankly, a lot of architects, like, if I could just skip that stage and go to the critique of the drafting, that's a very different skill set we have to develop in people. So it's just kind of up-leveling everyone in the same way. You have to understand the basics of math to use it, but no one does manual math anymore. You use calculators and spreadsheets.
Yep.
But you still have to understand the fundamentals of math in order to do it, to use these tools.
Absolutely. I often explain AI to people that it's not an oracle, it's a cartographer, and it can help you map a space, help you see options, help you dig in. I mean, it's great at agentic tooling. I mean, you can set up if you can manage your context well, you can set up operations, you can use it as a tool. But I like that you're framing it not as what is AI going to do for us? How is AI going to make things different? It's what's a problem we actually need to solve. And if AI plays a role in that, great. And it sounds like, with the job training, AI can also, and just the cultural change that's happening can cause problems that we need to think about and solve, like the training pipeline.
But I think there's opportunity there, though, for job creation and additional creative outlets for us to capitalize on this. That's exciting.
Right. I mean, and here's the thing: if you think back even 5 years ago, we can't imagine the things that we have now. Self-driving cars seem like something absolutely impossible to do. And I live in San Francisco, and I almost always take a Waymo. Partly because I'm a woman going home at night or something. I don't want anybody in the car with me. I trust the Waymo more than I would a driver. In the same way that I prefer women drivers over male drivers. So there's just different things that you could have never imagined. I remember at Forrester when we were looking at online shopping in retail, we thought, no one's ever going to buy shoes online. That's impossible. You want to go and try them on. And I buy almost all my shoes online now. So we think things that are impossible actually become possible, and we can't even begin to imagine. And so I believe we need to prepare ourselves for an unimaginable world. What are the possibilities? And when you come across something, you have to be curious. And again, focusing on the problems that we want to solve, not the things we want to do, but the problems we want to solve, what allow us to keep on top of all the changes that are going on. And it may not be able to solve it now, but it might in the future. But keep that running list of the problems you have and see and constantly check and see if AI can help you do it.
Say we have this negative connotation. There's fear. There's fear in the air. If we're going into a room where we're not sure if this is AI or real, and right now, if it's AI, if it's just if that's made aware, we're kind of turned off by it. But I think we're moving into a future where we're not going to care so much. We're going to get used to this. We're going to start understanding it better. We're going to realize that it is raising the bar. And I don't know that there's going to be a lot of pure social or pure media out there that's not going to be augmented or at least reviewed or use some type of AI tool to at least enhance that experience. I mean, I don't see a world where we're not doing that. I mean, I was just talking to my wife about publishers where everyone is using AI to start do that. It's not as good, but what happens when a generation of us being exposed to that, it changes the way, like Shakespeare's amazing, but we don't write like that anymore. And we wouldn't. Now we're writing in a different way. And I think that's just fundamentally changing over a period of time, which is being shortened because of all the advancements. So is this just going to be like everyday, common, accepted soon?
Well, again, do I really care how it's done versus is it helping me solve the problem?
Right.
If it's helping me solve, again, just keep coming back to the same. If it's helping me solve the problem, do I really care whether it was done by a human or an AI? I don't really need to know. I mean, in some circumstances, if I want to dig down deeper, and you better be able to tell me with transparency, how did you come into this? How did you develop this? And I'll give you an example. I recently put in place an LLM wiki. It was created about 6 weeks ago, this whole model by Andre Kaparthi. And it is basically it's a knowledge graph that sits on top of your content. So right now, if you're trying to have AI use anything like my book or something, I would give it my book. It would read through the whole book and do it and did a pretty good job. Now it's pulled out all the frameworks in my books, the case studies, the people, understands how they all tie together. It's incorporating all the conversations, the podcasts that I do. So it's acting in almost real time, building my knowledge graph. And I just went into it yesterday, and it's only about 2 weeks out. And I went into it yesterday and said, I need a bunch of new ideas. Go and do research on some of the most interesting, most commented on topics or things that are being talked about right now, like so the hot topics and articles and news items, and look at my knowledge base and merge the two together and give me a couple takes that I would have on this stuff. And so it's doing some of the pre-thinking for me. It would take me hours to do that.
Yeah.
To do that kind of research. But it understands everything that I quote know. And frankly, more than I can remember, because I can't remember all of that stuff in my brain. And then it's taking the external inputs that allow me to react to it. And I don't take those ideas and just turn them into articles. They are brainstorming, they're inspiration points for me to go, oh, wait, these two things I see on this list actually are related to each other. That would be an interesting article. So I'm still doing the thinking, but that heavy, like hands-on research, I don't have to do anymore. And it just frees me to do the synthesis instead.
I'm so excited that you brought up knowledge graphing because I've been obsessed with it, creating these little React visualizations that show you your knowledge graph. So you can see the connections. Very powerful, but you have to design it, and it compounds over time. That's one thing about these knowledge graphs, is that as you're building it, you can refine it. AI, I think, at scale and for an organization is becoming a game of context management, understanding what it's good at, its many, many failure points and hallucination points, its sycophancy. AI will tell you all day long that what you're doing is awesome. So I always inform people about anytime you're doing something, run it through a round of adversarial prompting. You'll see very, very quickly that language is fungible, and a large language model will give you whatever perspective you like. And it's kind of a mirror. If you're talking to it, it's going to bounce back at you the tone and style and what it thinks you want to hear. And so I think there is, as we move forward, there's a knowledge piece here, because if the tools are going to be designed to be anthropomorphized and to be used in ways that are always make me feel good, how do we train people what the tool is actually good at, what it's doing, what next token prediction really is, so that they can wield it effectively and not just as I need an answer. Oh, great, copy, paste, go. They see it as this tool is bouncing back at me the context token conversations that I fed into it. And once you see that, I think it changes your relationship with the technology.
Right. And again, I think one thing I'm really emphasizing for people is to get AI fluent. And what I mean by that is you understand what AI can do, what it can't do, to your point about Socratic parroting. The other thing is you understand how to use it responsibly and ethically. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have enough conversations around that. And then you know how to use it in your job. And the way I think about it is the first time you ever pick up chopsticks, and you'll all probably remember that, you're handed 2 sticks and go, how on earth am I going to pick up food with 2 sticks? And then over time, you struggle with it. And then eventually, over a pretty short period of time, you're shoving food into your mouth without even thinking about it. And that's where we want to get with AI. We want to get to the point where we just naturally know how to use it. And in particular, I encourage people when you're writing a prompt, add this one sentence at the end. Before you start, ask me any clarifying questions you may have.
Very
and it
good.
changes this the AI from being an answer machine, like just give me the answer already, to a conversation and a thought partner. And because it needs to understand the context in which you are asking your question. And so it will ask you a bunch of other questions to give you a better answer. And you can tell it, this is very important to my job. Be very careful about your work. Do not make things up, and cite everything if that's what you need at that point. You know, if I need to know what the weather patterns are in late October for a trip that I'm planning, it doesn't need to be super accurate, right? Just like tell me like what it is. But if it's something where it's being thoughtful, I'm going to make a decision on it, tell it, give it the context so it can do the work at the level of quality that you expect it to. So and again, the 2.0 version of this is you line up a bunch of the various LLMs that you use and you copy and paste a prompt with that question about clarifying questions to ask. And you copy the paste into all of these different LLMs. And then you read the questions and you use the one that asks you the best questions. Because for that day, on that job and task that you have, that engine is the best one for you. Because AI has its good days and its bad days. We all do. And so, which is the best LLM? I don't know. You're just going to have to test them all. But it's a pretty quick and easy test. I tend to use Claude right now because a lot of my knowledge base is in there. It just does a better job in general. I find it easier to use because of its interface, user interface, actually, where I never have to write code. I can just give it instructions and it remembers things. I can organize things into projects and folders. So it does a lot better job integrating me into my life. And I'm a little worried because it is so integrated now. It's going to be hard for me to extract myself from it. Right. So one of the things I do in particular is make sure that everything that I have is on my local folders, not inside of Claude, so that I can switch an LLM and I can have OpenAI's Codex, for example, and ChatGPT come and read the same files and know exactly what to do with them.
Oh, it's so smart. It's headless infrastructure.
Yes, exactly. So I don't have to worry about the actual AI. I can switch back and forth. I haven't set it up to do at that point, but again, my LLM is only 2 weeks old. So one of the things I want to test is like, is this one better or that one better against the same data? So it's one of those things where again, I'm preparing for flexibility and adaptability in my systems. And this is what I encourage all firms, like really be clear with your vendors and your technologists about adaptability and flexibility. Do not get locked in. Don't sign any contract for more than a year and have 90-day outs. So those are the ways that you can stay flexible.
So this is a great segue to talk about how AI is impacting the architectural industry, engineering, construction, all of the design professionals that are associated with this. And you are going to be speaking at this year's AIA conference in San Diego, which we're going to see you at, which is super exciting. I'm sure you've been wrapping your head around like some of these changes. Do you want to get into that and tell us what you're seeing?
Yeah. And again, the biggest question I get is how can architects use AI in everything from, again, just running the business to actually doing design to, just all the different things that architects do. And I have three very good friends who are architects. And the thing that they always talk about is all this other stuff gets in the way of what I love to do, which is design and build.
Yeah.
It just gets in the way. So how can we use AI to get rid of that stuff? And, how do you turn a 2D drawing into a 3D model? It's just still hard. How do I include the BIM information in all of this? So, and again, I think there's an efficiency play. And the danger here is that you're confusing all the activity around all the different ways you can use AI with actually making progress. Are you making progress against that goal? Is it giving you back that time to do the things that you love? And that should be the goal, not so much just that efficiency. And we talked a little bit earlier in the pod about just what that means, especially for developing talent. And every firm is, no matter how big or small you are, it is about that development of talent. Even for the solo people, you have other people who are going to be doing this for you on your behalf. So, and even for yourself. The other part is it's just in terms of so the first area is around value and around efficiency and productivity. The second area is around engagement, especially with your clients.
Exactly.
And I think Gensler was the one who came out and talked about how you have to go from being a presenter to a conductor. You're conducting all of these areas that are included. So you're the point person. And so how do you use AI to orchestrate things better with visualizations, with scenario modeling, but especially with storytelling, so that you're collapsing this cognitive dissonance between all the people who are working on the design and build and the client. And the client stop just reacting to renderings and they start being a co-creator.
Exactly.
And that's a very different type of relationship.
Yeah, when we're designing a space, we're really trying to wrap our head around a concept, and the hardest part is not, for at least for me, not designing the space. It's communicating that to the client. The more precise we can be, the clearer the concept is. However, that takes time. The more fleshed out a concept can be, and the more back and forth we have with the client, we can really go and make that deeper and meaningful and function better for the client. So it's now a collaboration, which is a lot more exciting than maybe working in a silo, which has happened on some projects in the past when we didn't have these tools that were able to, say, render multiple options in a short period of time that allows us to get to the next design stage to stay within budget. So it's super exciting for us because it's making these projects better and allowing us to focus on the actual being a practitioner in executing good design and making it exceptional.
Mm-hmm. And I think of AI as the translator. And again, we know AI is very good at translating from one language to the other, but it can also translate intent. And so a client has their unique way of expressing what they want. I just don't like the way this feels. It feels claustrophobic. The walls are coming in against me. And you're like, what does that mean from an architecture point of view, right? And then as an architect, you say, well, the walls are like this. And the client goes like, why does that make any difference? And so AI can be that sort of check on both sides to interpret, this is what you mean by this. And this is how an architect can understand that in terms of specs and walls being moved or windows being put in place. So again, we think that I do believe that a lot of the reasons why there's friction in these areas is that we just don't really understand what we each are trying to say to each other.
Yeah.
And so I believe that AI can help facilitate that. When it notices that there's a misunderstanding, it can say, stop everyone. Say, but let's say take a moment here to interpret, because we may not even realize as the lead architect on a project what is happening.
We're humans.
And so this can help us just make it, yeah, we're human. And then the third, so the first two areas are efficiency, productivity, engagement. But the third area is the most interesting, which is reinvention. What if we could reinvent what it means to be an architecture firm, to be a build firm? And in particular, I want to point to one area, which is, for example, when you have all the work that happens in the pre-design and all the things that have to go into the design. And it used to be a way that you would give away the pre-design to win the project. But AI could potentially make that the most valuable thing you do.
Yeah.
And if you can figure out how that adds value and how you're doing that, and that you can run, for example, 500 zoning scenarios and then make a recommendation. That recommendation is worth a lot because you're doing that pre-work in ahead. But you could do that now easily. And it used to be a loss leader that you would hide inside a project fee. Now it's actually something you get paid for to do.
Yeah.
And the danger is that if you don't do this, then the other property tech people or the platforms will do that. And the work won't even come to you. So I think there's a lot to be done in terms of thinking, what about this process could we actually change the dynamics on? Because now we have AI in the mix, that there's actually could be something that we don't do anymore, but also something that we do differently so that it adds value in that relationship.
I love that.
Why do you think nationally the narrative has been so focused on replacement? Because you're talking about something completely different. I'm sure in your space, you hear from multiple people that have a certain amount of very understandable anxiety about the state of technological change we're in, this technological revolution. What advice do you give when someone says, I don't know what to do with this, or I'm really worried about this, or they see it as a universal wrong, or I'm trying to wrap my head around the narrative? Because I have friends in Japan, and AI isn't talked about the way we're talking about it here as much. They're saying, oh, it's just a communal resource in the office that does these things, and it's transparent, and everyone can work with it. Now, granted, they have a different demographic, a contracting demographic, very different environment, but the mindset, I think, is just so much healthier around the technology. Not all doom and gloom, how do we cut as many seats as possible and replace them with a machine? It's how do we augment the talent and the people that we have to solve problems, like you said, to solve the problems in front of us as a supplement. I'm curious how you go about those conversations.
Right. Yeah, and again, there's some research that came out last summer from Stanford that was very interesting. It said that in the United States, only 39% of people believe that AI is going to be more beneficial than harmful. So almost twice as many people believe it's going to be harmful than beneficial.
Wow.
In China, that number is 83%. So 83% of people believe it's going to be more beneficial than harmful. And part of it is societal. We have a very individualistic society in the US and other Western democracies. And so when AI comes along, we face an existential identity crisis. AI is going to do the things that I do. And if I don't do them anymore and AI does them, then who am I? What value do I create? And in the absence of any real roadmap or conversation from our leaders, because they're frozen in the headlights, have no idea, there's a silence. So what fills that space? Fear and anxiety. I can't blame people. I mean, look at, these are the same tech people that spawn social media on us.
Yes.
And the world is not necessarily better because of that. And now we're going to trust them with AI? Nah, I don't want any of that. And so you see a lot of AI veganism is what I call it, happening, where people say like, I don't want to go anywhere near this. This is going to be bad news. Because who's watching out for me? This is me against the world here. I mean, seriously, why should I trust any of you with this? If instead a company came and said to its people and to prospective hires, we have a roadmap, we have these objectives. One organization said, we have 7 strategic objectives. The 6 are the usual types. Number 7 is we're going to use AI to achieve the first 6. And they had a roadmap. They didn't have a separate AI strategy. AI was in line with their mission and their purpose and their values. They had a clear explanation of how AI was going to work. And in particular, they could say to their people, this is how AI is going to impact us. We don't know exactly how it's going to do it, but you are valuable to us. And again, it's not so much the work that you do today, but the work you are going to do in the future with AI and with us. So here's the deal. We're going to give you the tools. We're going to give you the training, and you're going to learn. And most importantly, we're going to give you the time to practice, to become AI fluent. And together, we're going to figure out what this future looks like. And we want you to help us build that. And so instead of having something done to you, you're going to be part of the solution to us figuring this out. That's a very different conversation. In the vast majority of organizations, it's not happening because our leaders are abdicating AI to IT. Is looking at it as a technology. IT is going to have it, going to give it to everyone, and then we're done, right? No, you haven't even begun to scratch the surface. To have a conversation about what does work look like? How is the value that we create going to change over time? How are we going to figure this out and build this together? And if you don't have those conversations, the trust and the confidence in your organization to do that is zero. And so what are people going to do? They're going to leave. It is a flight risk. If you do not have your act together about what you're going to do with AI, your best people are going to leave and run towards the organizations and firms that do have a conversation, do have a roadmap, and have an approach. Even though it's incredibly messy, they will have an approach.
Yeah.
And they will change their minds. They will go backwards and forwards. They'll persist and pivot and know what the difference is between them. And they'll be so much further ahead and be winning with AI.
Yeah, I think a healthy mindset and attitude is also it's okay to try new things and fail. So I don't know that I worked for Google years ago, and they had this amazing philosophy that leadership was able to communicate to all their employees and contractors that it's okay to mess up. We want you to mess up quickly so we can pivot, find out the new thing that we're going to move towards and do that. So this way, they're just getting so much more done, and they're solving so many more problems because they're taking action and taking risks, right? Yes, their failure rate is higher, but their success rate is through the charts. It was a really interesting concept. So I feel it feels very like that same type of environment is even more important now with this new technology, this new attitude towards AI. Super exciting.
I just want to clarify that they had a saying, fail fast, fail smart. And the reality is nobody likes to fail. And so the way we think about it is try fast, learn fast. And so the thing here is there's a space for experimenting and learning. And then there's another area where you just have to make some decisions and put a stake in the ground and move towards it. And that's what we're seeing, this hesitancy, like, well, I don't know if it's going to work, so I'm not going to try it. Right. Well, no one knows if it's going to work. And the only way you're going to figure out if it's going to work or not is to do it. So we tell people, kill your pilots. Don't do any more pilots. Stop doing pilots because your pilots are doomed to fail because it's a pilot.
Yeah.
No one's going to take it seriously. But if you say, this is a problem that we have, here's a way that AI can be using it to solving it. Let's put it into production and see if it solves that problem. If it doesn't, we're going to be in such a better place to know what worked, what didn't work. If it solved our problem by 80%, you are 80% better than where you were before. You're not at 100%, but can we now close the gap of that 20%? You're going to be so much better off. Who wouldn't want that?
Exactly.
Or maybe you start and you just go, we just made a little dent in it. It doesn't feel like the juice is worth the squeeze here. Then maybe it's not ready. You wait a couple months, for the technology to get better. Try something else instead. So again, this is that sort of trial and error, but I don't want to say just you're trying. You're actually doing the work. You're using AI for meaningful work. And you're taking what feels like a really risky thing because it might not work out. And I go, actually, it's more risky to just stay where you are, not actually use it. That's actually more risky, but it feels safer because you're just staying with the status quo. But that status quo quickly becomes a past and you're still stuck back there. So I think you're always better off and to develop this muscle. And it's literally a muscle and a practice you have to develop.
Well said.
Where you are comfortable and you're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And we know this as builders, as creators, as architects, that it is a practice. And the first time you do a drawing and a design, it's not going to be very good, but that's why you practice. And so I've always said that athletes and artists are going to be the best at disruption because you know what it means to practice. You know that perfection is never possible. And yet we keep going, we keep trying. And so this idea of perfection and making the right answers and having all the answers before we make decisions kind of creeps into our practices as a firm, because we work with clients and they expect perfection. But what if that was not the case? What if it was much more of a conversation? Again, ongoing, co-created, knowing that it can be very, very messy at times. And AI is going to be thrown into it and just make it even messier, but also possibly much better too.
I love this because it's also that I don't even call it failure. When something doesn't work, that's data. And in human-centered design, that's really pushed into you. If I iterate and iterate and iterate, and every iteration is an improvement. And one thing that AI does really well is to help you do that faster. There are things I would try now in user experience design that I might not have, because the lift would be multi-days. You said that, like to do this might take me days and days just to try it. But now with that friction lowered, why not? If it doesn't work, then we have tangible data as to why it didn't work, and we can adapt and move and change. I think there's an opportunity to be more nimble and to stop seeing anything that didn't work as all right, we'll shut this thing down, but as we can learn from this, and now we have information we can use to solve the problem better. I think it's a great mindset around AI.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the mindset that's prevalent now is that you can't afford to make mistakes.
Right.
That you get your head cut off, you lose your job, your client's going to just be upset with you.
And that was my point. Yeah.
Versus saying, yeah, and we have this culture. And so it's one of the reasons why we start with culture. Culture is the biggest determinant of whether you're going to be successful with AI or not. It is not technology. It's people and culture and technology and your governance. Those are the 4 building blocks. And you can do a very quick spin around all those areas to say, if this is my plan, these are the problems we want to solve with AI, then where are the gaps that we need to fill in? And culture is usually the biggest one. That we do not have the right culture to do that experimentation, to do that learning. We think about speed, focus, experimenting, learning, and then customer centricity as the 5 linchpins for a AI-ready culture. And that experimenting and learning are 2 of the hardest ones to focus on. Speed, like how do you make decisions at speed that you're uncomfortable with? And we play with this idea of minimally viable data. What data do you need to make this decision? And not all the data, not 100% of the information. What's the minimum amount of information that you need to say, okay, let's go give it a try. There's indications that this might be the right direction. And once you do it, you get so much more data, to your point, that again, it's not failure. It's just more data to say, is this the right direction or do we need to pivot now?
Yeah.
And knowing whether you're going to pivot or persist is one of the hardest things to do. That is a judgment. There is no right answer to this. And what happens is your experience in making those types of judgments over and over and over again prepare you to make better judgments each time. And so again, it is a practice. It is something that you learn and you develop a sense of judgment. It's a sense of judgment, not perfect judgment, as I like to say. So this is one of those things that we have to develop in this age of AI. And again, these are all leadership issues. These are not technology issues. The technology works perfectly fine. But it's not just about adopting the technology, it's adapting our organizations. And that is much, much harder.
You mentioned earlier, Charlene, that you're using Claude. Can you speak to some other tools or other things that you're looking into that's piquing your interest right now?
Yes. Again, I use all the various versions of Claude. So I have the desktop versions with not just chat, but also co-work and code that tie directly into my data and my files. Again, I use ChatGPT again, just it's always there. It's always easy. It has a huge amount of history. I love Perplexity for the research that it does. It's just fast. It's easy. Again, ChatGPT also has some really deep, really good research too as well. And Perplexity does too as well. Gemini, I really like for planning things. It's really good at planning larger projects. So I might use Claude to begin the project and then just so it has a little bit of context, and then I'll move it to Gemini to do more detailed planning because it just has better integrations with tools and understands all the tools that are out there. And then I'll bring it back into Claude to actually implement it inside of my systems. Every once in a while, Grok surprises me.
Okay.
So I just where are you coming from? So again, I test all of them with these prompts that I paste into different places, and I see who does a better job. Every once in a while, Grok just surprises me. So it's once in a great while.
Do you know where I find Grok really interesting, Charlene? Is the it does the live X search. If you're trying to look for something around a topic and you want to know what's bubbling right now, the fact that it has this instant ability to read thousands of tweets on a topic across any number of languages is where I found this like little niche that Grok has. If you're like, oh, I want to learn about this new local model, and you have a little bit of information, you want to try it, you go to Grok for an X search, you can get a pretty good read of the developers, the high clout influencers that are using it, have tested it, what their case studies. And I think that to me has been kind of that Grok unique little side. But I love the way you're talking about it, because you aren't talking about one tool. You're talking about a headless operation that switches between tools where they have strengths and where they have weaknesses. And I really think that's the right frame.
Yeah. And I'll give an example. Microsoft Copilot has been sort of downplayed as a quote good LLM, and it's not as good and as flexible and cutting edge as Anthropic or OpenAI, for example, but it's pretty good. But I think it's really showing its strength now, when now you can use Anthropic's co-work on top of Copilot, and it's fully integrated into the enterprise. I mean, that is really interesting. And so I look at Gemini from Google and its ability to access all your Google tools, and Microsoft able to access all of your Microsoft tools and the knowledge bases behind them. Those two have a huge advantage when it comes to agentic AI.
Yep. Big time.
Because you can spin up all these agents and avoid agentic sprawl. I mean, agentic AI sprawl is like one of the biggest nightmares. Like, who's creating what agents and what governance do you have over them? What access do they have? And with Microsoft and Google, you actually have some sort of chance of actually controlling that. Very hard to do with Cloud Code. Very, very difficult to do. So again, it just inherits the existing permissions that you already have to the access and the data that you already have, and you can really govern that. And I do believe that governance is one of the hidden secrets. Organizations that have really good governance, we call it Goldilocks governance. Not too much, not too little, just right for your organization. That it allows you to create that structure, the scaffolding, the training wheels, whatever it is that you want to call the container, so that people know what the edge is and they can go right up to the very edge. And you tell people, this is the edge. Go up to it, stay there, but don't go past it. As long as you stay inside the fence, you're fine. Just stay inside the fence. But the fence can be pretty big for some people and very narrow for other people, very small for other people, depending on their capabilities and the trust and their demonstrated abilities. So again, I think governance is one of those hidden secrets that we don't spend nearly enough time on. But again, bad governance is what slows people down. Good governance speeds people up.
I could listen to you all day. I did want to so with all this knowledge you have, you are a best-selling author. Is there another book in the future for you? Like what's going on right now in around the headspace around that?
Well, I just launched my last book, Winning with AI, 2 months ago. So it's like, if people are like, what's the next book? We are planning on updating it. So roughly about 20% of the book needs to be updated. And it's most likely going to be the case studies that are going to be updated a little bit on the technology. The technology feels like it's changing constantly. It actually doesn't change that much. But the case studies change very quickly. So we are always looking for case studies. So if there are any architect firms or builders out there doing some interesting things about AI, please let me know. I would love to include you in the book.
Great.
And then I'm also just working on a larger project it's sort of a pet project and something I'm curious about, which is, where does wisdom come from? How do we develop wisdom? And we meet people who are wise beyond their age. How did they get that way? And how can I be wise beyond my age? And how can I increase the wisdom of the people around me and in my organization? Because if we can make just a little bit better decisions because we're wiser, then we're all going to be better off, and especially for organizations or society. And in a world where knowledge is commoditized, then what are we left with? It's all these things like self-reflection, intuition, judgment, wisdom, empathy.
Yeah.
How do we develop those things? And use AI to potentially help us develop these very human attributes, because that's what we need to key in on. The thing that's really going to be the places where, instead of thinking about AI augmenting humans, how do we have humans and the things that uniquely we can do augmenting AI?
Yeah.
And it's a small shift, but it's a significant shift about how we think about things.
100%. It involves critical thinking. Really, really well said.
Yeah. I am really excited. Danny, when is this going to air?
In about a month.
Okay. So it's probably going to be right around the time frame where we're going to see you in San Diego.
Yeah.
And wow, I'm really excited for that too. It's going to be great.
Yeah, it's really great hearing from someone that is thinking about this in a way that isn't like a chicken with their head cut off. Like, we got to do something now. We got to try it. Didn't work. Why didn't it work? We need to figure out something. It's calm. It's reflective. It's intelligent. It's how do we work this into our vision? Not how does this thing disrupt our vision, and how do we figure out how to do it before someone else does? AI isn't a thing. It's a new layer of abstraction. It's not something you can point at.
I look at it this way. People are like, we need the technology to get better, or we need to understand the newest technology, let it settle down before we implement it. I'm like, look, this technology is already mind-blowing as it is. And even if nothing else happened, it will take you a long time to just integrate all the amazing things it can do right now. So get started on doing those things. And some things will be more ready than others, but focus on the things that you can do. What are the quick wins, and which things need to be more strategic bets? It is a portfolio of investments in AI that you're going to be making here. So let's take a deep breath, everyone, and just get to work, roll up your sleeves, and do the most basic things right now. Like, do something with AI to just make it better for your people to work in, make it easier for your customers and your clients to connect with you. These are things that are already well proven. They work. You can easily deal with hallucinations these days.
Yeah.
There's no reason you should be having anything hallucinate on you. So these are all addressable. These are all completely addressable. So what's holding you back, really? These are excuses. It's ways to procrastinate, actually jumping into the water. And it's not that cold, really. It's really quite lukewarm now, so it's quite comfortable. And so this is it's no more excuses. There's just no more excuses to not be using AI, and for you to figure out how to do it. Again, the technology didn't change a whit. You still have a lot to do.
This has been so much fun. I'm speechless almost. I had trouble. I just wanted to listen to more, and I had trouble processing like how crazy and exciting this all is. I want to do this every day. Thanks again. I look forward to seeing you in June. And with that, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
This has been the Arcfluence podcast. As always, you can get more information and additional content on arcfluence.com. Please subscribe on the platform of your choice and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you.